just last September, Nvidia released the GTX 980, the most powerful single GPU on the market. And yet, here we are, just over 6 months later, and the company has given us a new piece of sexy silicon to lust over. But as I noticed in my GTX 980 review, that card wasn't the generational leap in performance you might have expected. Enter the GTX Titan X, a full-fat implementation of Nvidia's power-efficient Maxwell architecture that pairs a wildly over-the-top 12GB of VRAM with 7 teraflops of processing power. It's big, it's bold, and it's badass, but boy is it going to cost you. So, just what do you get with the Titan X? Headline specs are 3072 CUDA cores, 96 ROPS, and 12GB of VRAM tied to a full-fat 384-bit memory system. And yes, 970 owners, before you ask, that's a full 12GB at maximum speed. Compared to the GTX 980, the Titan X is clocked slower by a few hundred megahertz, but the vastly higher amount of CUDA cores and ROPS more than makes up the difference. And hey, if you're into overclocking, the Titan X's 6+2 phase design means that you can crank up the power target to 110%, pushing the wattage up from 250 to 275 watts. Yes, there's a higher TDP this time around, up from the 165 watts of the GTX 980. Unlike AMD's cards though, Nvidia's extremely power-efficient architecture has given the company space to increase performance without dramatically increasing TDP and heat, or needing a particularly exotic cooling solution. Still, you'll need 6 and 8-pin power from your power supply this time, with Nvidia recommending a minimum of 600 watts to get the job done. Aside from the snazzy black exterior, the Titan X uses the same excellent reference cooler as Nvidia's other cards. However, unlike the GTX 980, Nvidia is only allowing partners to release cards with the reference cooler, so don't expect the likes of MSI's excellent twin Frozen cooling system to be hitting Titans anytime soon. Not that it matters too much. In testing, the GTX Titan is pretty quiet, although thanks to increased wattage, it is noticeably louder than the 980 under load. It's not overly distracting by any means, and it's certainly quieter than AMD's cards, but it's something to bear in mind if noise is a big issue for you. On to performance then, and no surprises here, the GTX Titan X is the fastest single GPU I've ever tested. Across the board, there's between a 25 and 30% boost in performance over the 980 and up to 40% over an AMD R9 290X. At 1440p, the Titan X pushed above 60 frames per second in all the games we tested, including, yes, Crysis 3. Going to 4K still showed impressive results, and with the exception of Crysis 3 this time around, no game dropped below 40 frames per second. The Titan X is the first card where you can reasonably play in 4K without having to go with an SLI or Crossfire setup. So, as expected, the Titan X is now the fastest GPU on the block. And while no GPU is ever really future-proof, with 12GB of VRAM on board, it's likely that you'll be able to keep the Titan X around a while longer than your average graphics card. And really, that's who the Titan X is for, the guy or gal who won't accept anything less than the very best in performance. This is an enthusiast-grade graphics card with enthusiast pricing to match. But even if you don't take into account all the great Nvidia extras you get for the cash, G-Sync, GeForce Experience, and GameWorks, the Titan X is, finally, a generational leap in performance over the 7 series, and the absolute best graphics card money can buy.